Abstract Curiosity Podcast is your go-to spot for those eager to level up with a deeper sense of self by exploring the world with a curious eye. Life's an adventure, and sometimes we just need a funky new roadmap to navigate our way through this wild world.
Welcome to Abstract Curiosity. My name is Rebeka. I'm a 1/3 mental projector, Virgo sun, Capricorn moon, and rising.
Hi, I'm Michelle. I am a 4/1 emotional generator. I am a Scorpio, Aquarius moon, and a rising Cancer. And we have our beautiful guest, Corinne, who came back for part 2 with us. Corinne, tell us your stats.
I'm Corinne, and I am a 1/3 emotional manifesting generator. And my astrology is Sun in Virgo, rising sign in Virgo, with a beautiful Libra moon.
I just love that Libra moon. And I want to say for anybody who's just now finding us, we like to introduce ourselves this way, just so you understand the filter that we are moving through. And maybe it'll help you connect to the information in a little different way. Thank you for joining us again, Corinne. Our first conversation was so amazing and so much fun. And we just barely started listener questions. So I think we're going to continue with that. But I wanted to say, if anybody's just finding this one, go listen to that first episode, 'cause there's a wealth of information over there.
Yep, there is. Yeah, there definitely is.
Yeah.
Yep. Good stories. All right.
I've already learned so much and healed my inner teenager in ways I didn't know needed healing. So thank you.
Thank you for having me back again. Love the first. Can't wait for the second. Let's do this.
Okay, so we had another question. Any info on when you have disease related to your cycle, i.e. PCOS, endometriosis, etc.?
I think that's a really big question because, there are a lot of women out there that are dealing with quote unquote disease within our menstrual cycles. And one thing I can say is don't give up. Don't feel like what the doctors are telling you is all that there is. For me, I really think that we put shame when these things come up. PCOS, things aren't, infertility. We're putting a lot of shame on ourselves, and we have to stop that. There's so many factors that are going into what is happening in your womanhood. It's your womb space. So my first thing with that is, how can we bring your love and attention back to the womb? How can we heal past traumas? How can we really, I look at this from a totally different aspect. This is where I really get spiritual. This is where I really want you to own your sexuality. I want you to own the beauty of your cycle. I want you to connect in a way that each phase is being honored and not put shame on it. Because, a lot of times with the medical community being what it is right now, we're just told we're broken, and we are not broken. There's a lot of aspects of life that are going on for you when you're dealing with this. So I'm going to be honest, this question probably wanted like this pinpointed thing, and I'm not willing to do that. I'm willing to say, let's step back. Let's step into your spirituality, whatever that looks like. And let's bring the love back into yourself, because healing starts when we're able to look at things in a different manner than what we're being told from society on this.
I loved it when you said, let's go back to like just learning to love that area in our body. And I had an exceptional experience years ago with a female woman who had came in, and she had, and I want to share this because I think this is important for anybody going through what Corinne had said. And there is no one answer for it, right? But that absolute love of that area, like, listen, there's a lot of us who were raised in religion, and sex in itself was considered taboo, and it was our responsibility. I've been like on this huge cult watching of every a lot of the cults that are coming out, and how it's when kids are really young that it's dumped upon them. For the girls, like if a man comes to you and tries to take you sexually, that's your fault because you didn't
Mhm.
wear your dress long enough, or you didn't cross your legs, or you dress this way or that way. I mean, the variety of it is huge. So can you imagine like how much all of the women in their uterus are holding on to that pressure in itself? That's what
Yes.
popped in. Sorry, that was just when you were talking, Corinne, about loving it, like how important it is for women in general to start to embrace the idea that sex is okay. It's a part of you. And even, Corinne, when you said even understanding your sexuality, right? We understand in human design and throughout centuries that not everybody finds sexuality comfortable, or who they're supposed to be with, or
Yeah.
to even touch themselves. Like sex has been used as a controlling aspect. And so it does make sense that a lot of women may end up having some issues in that area for themselves because maybe they're holding it on in culture. And when I used to do past life regressions, there was a lot of people going into past stories about the control of that area. And in my years of counseling people, there have been more than not, I would say probably 2% people have come to me that haven't been sexually aggressed upon, men and women, unwanted. So I know that's a heavy, dark thing, but you think about that, right? Like to both of you, like it's unbelievable as a culture. We're always talking about how we can clean out our lineage lines, but
Yeah.
just think about it from a feminine aspect and all the stuff I'm still carrying around from my own personal lineage, and then the lineage of just being a feminine, right? And stepping into that
Yes.
goddess energy. Um, I'm grateful for that person's question.
Very much so. Yes.
Yes, this unpacked a whole other layer I wasn't even expecting because I really appreciated what you were saying, Corinne, as well, of just moving into the love and appreciation of that space, and how you even how you called out like this is what I'm willing to give for this question, because I imagine there's just so much detail, like there's so much nuance in
Yeah.
each person's experience. You just
Yes.
can't give a detailed thing. And so to move into love is so beautiful. And then everything you were saying, Michelle, about the sexuality, like that really hit too, because I did grow up in the church and I felt it. Okay, here's the thing that's so frustrating too, because just like you said, it's the woman's responsibility, it's the little girl's responsibility
Yeah.
to dress modestly and
Mhm.
to take, like, make sure that she's not doing anything like it's her fault or whatever. And then as soon as you get married, because I did the godly thing, I was with my husband. We did not have sex before we got married. And then
Okay.
we had sex, and then it's like, oh, now we're supposed to do it all the time.
Yeah.
Right? And so then it was such a weird thing in my mind and in my body, because I was like, okay, now we're allowed to do it. We're supposed to do it all the time. He's supposed to want it all the time. Plus, we were 20 years old. So, like, usually people are
Yeah,
gonna.
it's different.
Right, and
Yeah.
then I'm like,
Yeah.
"Okay, so how do I switch into just being this sexual being?" And it took me a while to do that, and then there was, like, a lot of sexual trauma, like, that we don't need to get into, but, it's just I'm like, "What is this journey? What is happening? Why are we putting so much onto women?" So both of the things that you said, to just move into love, like, when I thought about filling my womb
Huge.
space with love, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I haven't been doing that." I
Yeah.
haven't appreciated that space at all. I've been shaming it, and like everything that I've been taught from men, like we were talking about before, these white men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
Yes.
oh, thank you.
Yes.
Like, wow, this really uncovered a whole deeper layer.
I think that's so beautiful because it really comes down to that maiden mother crone. If we
There we
learned what
go.
we were supposed to learn about what our bodies do, how to work with our cycles in our maiden stages when we're just starting out, like women in the past used to. We used to collectively teach these young girls what their cycle was, what their bodies meant, how to hold the space for themselves. If we did that for our youngest, imagine how we would feel as we stepped into motherhood. Think how lost we feel in motherhood. We don't talk about you know, I'm the first one who says to a woman, "Oh, you're pregnant. Has anyone talked to you about afterbirth?"
Mm,
No. What?
Mm,
no.
Let's be ready for this, because we don't talk about it. And
No, we
then
don't.
yeah.
we're going through all of these huge body changes, just like we did in Maiden, but no one talked to us about. Now we're going through all these another amazing and scary and breathtakingly beautiful moments in our bodies. We're readjusting what our whole body image is, but no
Mm,
one's talking about it. And then we step into crone, and we've gone through all of this, but we haven't owned it. And Michelle, you can answer this. I have heard that a lot of women, as they step into their crone ages, almost have a mourning period for that past motherhood, that past of, well, did I own that enough? And, you know,
Mm,
those aspects. And as you step in, but crone is what I, you know, live for in my life, because if you're open with it and you've connected through the other two stages, you are the wisdom keeper. You are the one who's going, "Come to me, maiden, let me explain to you what this is like. Come to me, mother, let me explain to you what this looked like." And then you are here. And
mm.
but if we don't start from maiden, oh, it makes me cry. If we don't start with
mhm.
maiden, this whole journey is so scary in every step.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I just appreciate that you're even asking me those questions, because I think it was my biggest fear of becoming the crone. And I didn't like saying that until recently. Because our image of women is, when you get to the crone phase, you're not useful anymore.
Mm.
I look at
Society has
my
told us that.
elders.
Yeah.
Yep, 1,000%. And what's my purpose? And because we don't have a traditional, at least in America, we don't have a really good traditional baseline of like understanding that people who've experienced things have wisdom. Because unfortunately, I see a lot of the older people, they're in their complaining stage. They're not open to learning and progressing along with everybody else. And so I think there was a lot of fear in that for me. Like, I'm going to be forgotten, and my job is done. So I agree with you. And I loved how you asked that. Like, how did you feel about, yeah, there is a mourning period. And then there is, oh my gosh, I never have to put on another pad or tampon for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
That
And that's a
is
celebration in itself,
liberating.
isn't it? Yeah.
And then you think about all the finances behind all that. And the other thing that I wanted to dial it back on, because we were talking about how for young girls, and like what you were saying, going from being the maiden to the mother, and like you said, Rebeka, like, and then all of a sudden I waited, and then now there's this whole new level of expectation of my body to this person that I've committed my life with, which is where sometimes a lot of control happens in a marriage, right?
Mhm.
And then comparison, when you talk to other couples or girls, like, oh, I have sex every day because I know it's how he needs to connect with me. And then it's like, even during your period, well, then I do something different. And I'm like, but how does it feel for you? And they're like, this is still happening, by the way. This
Yes,
shit is
Oh,
still
yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
definitely.
But the other part that we hadn't talked about was, but what about when the girl is young and she starts to feel frisky? And all of a sudden we never talk about that. Like, it's
Mm-mm.
always been in our culture. If a girl is going out, we become what, slutty, like how they labeled, the Magdalens, to Mary Magdalene. And,
Yeah.
what about that?
Well, look at
Yep.
Taylor Swift. She's even talked about, she's like, I sat next to somebody at lunch one time, and then people wrote stories about how I'm a slut because,
Mm.
they just turned that into her.
Because that's the easiest way to go, isn't it? Mm,
Right.
right away. We own our power, we own our sexuality in our maiden phase, and we are sluts. That's just how it goes. Thank you, masculine
But
energies.
I
yeah, and
know.
like,
They
it's okay for the man to do it whenever they want. Like,
Yep.
right, because that's natural. That's
Yeah. Primal. It's their primal instincts. Listen, I
right.
got primal instincts too, baby.
Right? It makes no sense. And so I want to piggyback on some of the things that you were saying, Michelle, because, switching into marriage, like I was talking about, and how all of a sudden I'm supposed to do it all the time. And then, yes, I would go to Bible studies. I was still very religious for the first few years of my marriage. And all these women are saying, like, these older women who are telling us, okay, you've got to like make sure that you're ready. If you're not in the mood, like go take a bath and do something to get in the mood, or you just all this stuff about how you've got to be ready all the time. And then I had a husband who wasn't interested, and so I was very confused, and it
Oh,
really messed
Ah,
with my self-esteem and like all kinds of stuff. And so then I feel like I probably pushed a little more, because I'm like, this is what I'm supposed to do as a wife, this is what we're supposed to want, this is. And it was just really weird. It's taken a while to unpack. But the whole thing that you were talking about before, like if we had this cycle, when you were talking about the cycle of maiden, mother, crone, and if the crone comes back to the maiden and is able to just nurture through that whole time, like that just feels so beautiful. And we have done a disservice to our society by shutting down the feminine. And I'm so glad that it is coming back up. It is rising back up.
woohoo.
And the thing I love about it too is that it's about nurturing. It's
yeah.
not it's not trying to cut down anybody. It's not
Mm-mm.
shoving out the masculine because we think it's wrong. It's saying, no, this is a time of nurturing and balance and growth and inclusion.
Yeah.
And I'm just so
Inclusion.
grateful
Yeah.
for it.
And we're not leaving men behind. We're doing it for,
No.
like we said before in the last episode, we're all moms of boys.
Yeah.
We're nurturing them to understand their masculine and their feminine, because that is it. All of us have both energies, and we need to be able to do that, not just for women, not just for girls,
Mhm.
but for boys and men as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it can only benefit everybody to have these conversations. Like we talked about before, like if men were more understanding and just more like supportive of the cycle, and it was just part of their life too,
Yep.
that only makes everybody better.
Yes. Yeah. And that's exactly it. And I love how you talked about that switch. Like that is part of it, isn't it? Like, oh, everything that this is just blown. Yes. I love you,
I
ladies.
know. We
I
we
know.
go in
We
5,000 directions with this stuff. Yeah. So
Like
we
important.
tearing
could
up.
go deep. Yes. But there is just, I think it just speaks to the expectations put on women throughout our whole lives. I mean, I was 20 years old. Here's the other thing. I walk, my husband or fiance at the time, my kid's dad, I'm just going to call him my kid's dad. We walk into the courthouse to get our marriage license right before we get married. And they're like, oh, cool. Here you go. Like 20-year-old kids, no problem. Fine. We had mentors in the church who like talked to us all the time and gave us advice. Nobody in that time was like, maybe you shouldn't. There were like random strangers that would see the ring on my finger and be like, why would you throw your life away like that? Like, what are you
Mm.
doing? But I
Wow.
was in love and whatever. So it's just really interesting, because then we were married for a little over 10 years. We get divorced, and then all of a sudden we have to take these like parenting classes before they'll grant the divorce, to like prove that we can work together, like all this stuff. I'm like, why did nobody ask us to prove anything at 20 years old? 20
Right.
years old, they're like,
Mm,
sure, here, go get married. And now that we've grown up a little bit, it's like, no, you got to jump through hoops. I
Yeah.
just don't understand our
it's
society.
interesting.
So,
That is the hardest thing, isn't it? And, Michelle talked about the Mary Magdalenes, and, that is something that I talk about on my website in one of my classes, is the history of this all and where it all kind of began. And it's interesting
Yep.
because you both have religious backgrounds, and I'm not as much a religious, I don't come from a religious background. My husband did. Um, but to see all the way back to Adam and Eve is really
Mhm.
where that shift came, when structured religion came in. All of a sudden, Eve was shamed
mhm.
because it was her
Mhm.
wrongdoing feeding Adam that apple. He had no problem eating that, no, I have no of my own will. And she forced him to eat
Mhm.
that apple, and God, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it was like she was cursed with painful periods and difficult labor,
Childbirth.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there we go.
Yep.
All of a sudden it is a curse. And we literally, those are the things that the way that we, the monthly
precedent.
curse,
Yes. Yes, it sends the precedent. And at one period of time, the only teaching and learning people had was through their church. They didn't have schools. So that premise has been dug into everybody who believes in some type of religion. And by the way, we're not saying that religion is wrong or bad. For each person, it's very individual. But there is a premise that needs to be brought forward on all that and how women were really steeped in, it will be your fault.
Yeah.
In every shape or form. What does that tell you about women? We're strong SOBs. Not only do we carry life, right?
Yes.
Like every month we have the opportunity of carrying life. And so, when we're talking about even manifesting, like I'm always trying to describe to women, like you have to understand, it doesn't matter if you've had children or not, you're manifesting every single month by putting a seed within your own womb. Like own the power of who you are, right? To allow that during the new moon cycle, the intentions. And yeah, like if they've been telling us we're so powerful that they're scared of what we can do. Well, then let's turn it on for ourselves and say, okay, we're kind of done with this. Like I'm going to say the word period. And I'm going to say that, my sexuality is very important compared to men. Like all of this stuff freaking matters. And hopefully some young girls might be turned on to listening to something like this, and they'll have some epiphanies and go find and seek the crones in their own lives that will support them in that. Cause I know they're out there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And that's it.
That's good.
And awakening the mothers, like that's where I'm at. I'm in that age of, my oldest is 10, my youngest is 5, and I'm refining myself. And, it's as I'm doing that, I'm connecting with women who are just like me. We want to step into our powers because when we do get to crone, we want to go, I know this, I see this for what it is. Now let me gift it for you. Let me give this information to you. And we are lucky because, Michelle, the women of your generation are remembering that they are freaking powerful in this stage. And we are so lucky that your generation is awakening to owning that in themselves, because we as women are lucky to see that, because we need to know that too. It's okay.
Yeah, that's lovely. Lovely.
Okay. So good. This is so good. Okay. I'm going to read the next question. This one was a little interesting. So we're going to see where we go with it. Talk about what happens to a cycle when you are in extended transference versus not. So we chatted about this one before we got on air, and we both were a little confused. But my interpretation of this is that when you're in transference, according to human design, then you are basically in the not self. You're not aligned. You are stuck in conditioning. And so the way that I interpret this question is basically what happens to your cycle when you're continuously conditioned by the world around you, when you're not in alignment, when you are not being yourself, essentially, is how I hear it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, and I don't know which one this came off of. I did a couple of posts yesterday. I know you guys did too. I don't know which one it came off, but I was talking about emotional waves in human design. So I'm going to pull up a screen real quick just to share, and then Corinne and you can kind of like give your insights on this all. Okay, so this is, and the part that I want to talk about, this is just somebody's chart. What we're talking about is the emotional wave center, the solar plexus. And something that popped into my head was when we were talking about doing this podcast, and maybe this is what this person was alluding to, is that, if somebody is defined here, it means they create their own emotional waves. If it's white, if the center right here is actually white, it means you're considered a non-emotional, which actually means when you're around somebody like me or Corinne that have these areas defined, somebody like Rebeka who has it undefined and it's white, she feels our emotions, but you feel it tenfold. Now, of course, I wouldn't know what that's like because I don't have that. So part of my questioning was, how does that affect women's cycles? Because in human design, we understand, like we talk about the premise isn't that we understand there's a premise of like, if you have gate 41 or 30, that's a full channel, or 36 to 35, that's considered an emotional wave, which has, it's what I call the elevator. Rebeka can give the proper name. That's what I call it, the elevator. And it really is somebody who is having their own emotional wave. And usually I come crashing down when an expectation isn't met. And then we've got the 3955 or the 2212. And that one has to do with more of a spontaneous, it kind of comes out of nowhere. And then we have the 1949. Oh, that one's it. Oh no, 3740. And that one's what we consider like the buildup, slowly builds up. Things just kind of start to irritate you. And then all of a sudden you're going to have a blow. And then we have a real kind of a little bit gentler one. I call it subtle, where you may not even realize it. So there's all these emotional waves that people can experience if you are considered an emotional in your human design chart. And then there's non-emotional. So my question was, you know, Ra was a guy who brought this information to us. I wish he was still alive so we could ask him. But my question is, does that impact when women are having their flows, their periods? Does that impact what type of wave they're having? Do they still have their same typical waves? And or does that all get flushed out and you're like, I'm just having an emotional experience? So when we go to explain it from a feminine aspect, is it really different than what we've been taught?
Mm.
Right? Because it came through the eyes of a man.
Yeah. Yep.
Thought. And how would we know? I don't know. I think the only way that we would know is if you knew your channels and you knew what they understood. So for you, Corinne, you definitely have a
Well,
buildup,
yeah. Well, yeah, we can,
right? And
yeah,
it's yeah. And so do you experience that same type of emotional response while you're in your period, or do you feel like it's all of them?
I definitely feel that I do feel a difference between my period emotional response to my emotional waves. Um,
Ah.
my emotional waves, funny enough, because we were saying that I do have the solar plexus colored in. I can talk myself into it. I literally just did this the past 2 days. I blocked myself. I was worried about coming on here. I had do I know enough? Am I ready for this? Can I do this? And I spiraled. And right
Mm.
before we came on, I had to pull some cards, get myself centered, and, ask my guides for a little clarity. Those emotional waves feel a lot different than the emotional wave for my period. My emotional wave for my period, it is a buildup, but and maybe it's because I work with my cycle that I know it's
Mm.
coming. I see it for what it is. Um, and I look forward to the release. When it's an emotional wave, I don't always know when I'm going to come out of it. And that can be a little stressful in itself on an emotional wave. My period, I'm
Mm.
like, I'm in this for 5 days. I'm cool. You got this. Own this. Be in it. What does this mean? I can really kind of like work with it. Okay, I can feel the intensity of it. Where the emotional wave for me can be a lot, I think, more, um,
Huh.
if that makes sense. And that could, like
No,
I said,
I'm
be
loving that.
different for everybody. But
Yeah, well, Rebeka, because I don't have it anymore, I don't think I can really accurately say. So what about for you, Rebeka? Do you notice anything different?
Um, no, but the past few years I've been very single and I don't really have that much, like, I feel like I'm just in my own space a lot. So,
Mm.
you know what I mean? Like, there's not been anybody to annoy me. Um,
Yeah.
I'm just kind of flowing. And for the past year or so, I've been a lot more conscious. I've just been really gifting myself that time, the slow down time. Like, instead of working out, I'll go take a bath in the morning
yes.
and really just let myself that, because I'm 42. I'm like, I don't know how many more periods I'm gonna have, so I'm just gonna enjoy it. I'm just gonna like be with it.
Mm.
Yes.
And
Exactly. Yep.
like it might be 10 more years. I don't know, might be two. I have no idea. So let's just be with it. So um yeah, that might be mine. I don't know if that's very helpful at
Well,
all, but
so no, but then here's the question, because you are a non-emotional does it really show up as, if you're not around anybody and you're going through your period, do you not really have a big emotional wave?
No.
That's what I'm trying to get to. You don't feel like you do.
If I'm not around people, if I'm just like at home by myself for a couple
Yeah.
days,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got nothing. Like
Okay.
I've got it. I don't even, I've got nothing. If I want to get anything done at that point, I can't be alone for too long because I literally just am left with my brain.
Mm.
That's it.
I just think that's a really interesting, and I'm so appreciative that you guys let me bring that up. Well, in the prompting of the question, I think it's helpful because even as somebody who we all utilize human design, like, so when we're talking to younger girls, right? That and we don't know. I would love to hear other people's input that's listening to this. If you're non-emotional, and if you do have an opportunity to be alone while you're in your flow, do you not really have a big emotional shift? Because I know I always had emotions within my periods.
Yeah.
I always had flows with them. And of course, Corinne would tell you, of course, a lot of it also depends on your astrology chart, where the moon's hitting and all these transits, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I
But
was gonna say. Looking at where the moon is at your start and
yeah,
all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. But I think it's a good discussion. And I think as practitioners and I think as women, like, being mindful that maybe somebody listening to this is like, I don't ever experience that with my period. I really don't really have PMS. I don't really. And so I would be very curious to see a study or somebody like taking up the research to see, oh, she's a non-emotional. So literally, if she is away and she's not with a tribe or a group, she doesn't really have those big waves. And if you are an emotional person, and I knew that, and I had a niece and I looked at her chart and I'm like, you're starting to observe it, like, oh, she really does have emotional waves. Then again, then we have to train, right? Like, then we've got two different fields that we're discussing with girls, because that's what human design is, right? A huge, massive blueprint of who you are. And then we need to embrace them maybe differently.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I
I don't
think
know.
this is amazing because I'm like taking note, clients, that we're going to be looking much deeper at this.
Yeah, let the
Yeah.
1-3 do the research on this.
Yeah. Let us know, Corinne, what you find. We would love to
Yeah.
have you back on again, like, let's say in a year, and let's figure out what you saw. And yeah, I think it's just,
That
again,
is,
a way a woman would look at it and a man wouldn't. A man wouldn't, because he
Yep.
doesn't go through it.
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I know that's the thing I say to people all the time. I'm like, Raw was a white dude in the 80s. Okay. Like, we're grateful that he brought this system to the
Very
world,
grateful.
but we're
Yeah.
also going to pay
Yeah.
attention to the filter. Like,
I love that.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
are, because he was a manifester and a dramatic manifester. And I love that what you just said about he was a white male, and we're grateful for it. But in reality, still in the 80s, a white male is probably the only one that would have gotten the download and been
Mhm.
able to give it out and people actually respond to it. Had it
Mhm.
probably still been a female that got it, or maybe there was one out there that did, her getting it out there into a larger platform at that point in time still would have been difficult. So I get it.
Especially in the 80s. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And apparently many people got the download. It's just Raw was the only one
I
that was able
wondered.
to talk about it. Yeah.
Manifester.
Yes, with that
Yeah.
51 in the sun, like, and he had a lot of the mystic circuitry. So while it
Yes.
was shocking to his system, like it was a deeply shocking and traumatic experience, he had the bandwidth to handle it and to move through it. And so not everybody did.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Interesting.
amazing. Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like the final question was really what we just talked about. So I'm going to read this
Mm.
question so we can confirm, and then I might go back to the other one and just see. Okay, I feel like cycling for an emo person is the wave until the cycle ends. Then it's a whole new thing. Any feedback on that? I don't really understand what they're asking, honestly. Maybe because I'm not emotional.
Yeah. I was a little confused by this question as well. So maybe Michelle can lean on it for us.
Are they saying emu as in?
Emotional.
Emotional wave.
I
And,
went emo as in like my childhood.
and yeah.
So did I for a second. So say the question one more time for me. Sorry.
I feel like cycling for an emotional person is the wave
Mm.
until the cycle ends. Then it's a whole new thing. Any feedback on that? And maybe the way I
Yeah, I think
phrased
that.
it, like, did I say cycle and they just thought emotional cycle and not menstrual cycle? I don't know. So,
Yeah, I was.
Well, Yeah, I'm not sure either. I just would say that I think that's the thing that we've got to investigate. We don't know the truth. And
Yeah.
for other people, like Corinne just said, Corinne said she feels it completely differently.
Yeah.
So if this person still is having cycles, what we're going to ask you is be more observant when you're having an emotional wave. What type of wave do you have? Know the differences between the 4 different waves. Notice what it is on your chart. Like, which ones am I supposed to, in the experiment, does it look like I have?
Yeah.
And then, because listen, I do have the big elevator drop, but at times I still have these outbursts. But typically the outbursts are because an expectation didn't get met.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
100%. That's what happens for me. So I don't know when I was going through it if mine would have been different with it all. But I love how you said, Corinne, I know when it's within my period, this is only going to last for 5 days,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure how long my other one's going to last when when I'm in it. So I guess that's what we're asking our listeners to do. Let us know, become observant. Let's empower ourselves with the emotional waves and utilizing for what they're for, emotional intelligence. We learn a lot when we're in our waves. That's why we're
Whole
doing
time.
it.
We wanna
Yeah,
know.
right. Yeah, we want to know.
Give us
It's a
all the
really good
information so
point.
we can chart this.
Yeah.
I know the 2
Yes.
one-line, or actually
Yes.
all 3 of
Intrigued.
us have one-lines here, so you
Yeah.
can share all the information you want, guys.
Please.
We would love it.
Yeah.
We would love it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to this one because there's just an aspect that I'm really curious about. Talk about what happens to a cycle when you are in extended transference versus not. And so again, I feel like transference just means not self, like you're
Mm.
not being healthy, you're not being true to yourself. And so I feel like there could be something happening with your cycle if you are just so deeply not self, so conditioned by the world around you. What unhealthy things could be coming up if you're so stressed, you're not aligned versus when you're really in like connected to your own energy and being who you are. Do you think there could be some aspect of that that would affect your cycle?
Can I share on this one?
Mm.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
I worked for a company for 15 years that was completely run by men. I was the only woman in the office. I live in a home with all boys, a husband. I have my beautiful star mom lives with us, but other than that, they're all men. I lived in my masculine for a long time. And I laugh because all my boys and my husband are all water signs, and I am an earth sign, very heavy earth. And I lived in this masculine energy for a really long time. And it got to the point where I lost my period.
Mm.
It completely disappeared. And that was my wake up call. I shouldn't even say that. It wasn't like poof, it was gone. It was a gradual, my period was getting heavier. It was getting, unbearable. I was cursing it. I was cursing my
Mm.
period. I was like, this
Yeah.
is ridiculous. I just don't want to deal with this anymore. Like, this is it's too much. I'd had 3 kids. I breastfed for a year for each of them. It was a lot. And I was living in this masculine energy. I was completely out of my spiritual connection.
Mm.
And as I was cursing my period, I was literally like, I don't even want to do this anymore. Like, ugh, I'm over it. Gone. It said, fine, you don't deserve it anymore. And I lost it for quite a few months. And I finally said, I am unhealthy. I had gained a lot of weight, just feeling horrible. And I finally took the steps to do what I needed to do. And I contacted one of my amazing mentors, Sarah Ball, the hormone goddess. And I started working back with my body. And the first things that I did were I started eating with my cycle, but I reconnected with my spirituality. I reconnected with my
Mm.
feminine, and I did a lot of work of releasing the guilt I had for cursing my period.
Mm.
And I got my period back within a month and a half.
Mm.
But that was the beginning of the journey of reawakening to my feminine energies. So I think what I'm trying to get at with that story is, yes, if you are living out of balance, the first thing you're going to notice is an out of balance cycle.
Mhm.
It is
Yeah,
so
makes
much
sense.
more than just hormones. It is emotional, because it is your emotions. And the women I work with, they say it all the time. When I started working with my cycle and understanding the phases and honoring it for what it is, I feel so much more in balance. So
Yeah, I love
I
that.
do think that very much, for whatever that looks like for somebody. If you're
Mhm.
living outside of your balance as a woman, as someone who, a female, yeah, you're gonna see that imbalance within your cycle, definitely.
Well, and I think another point to bring up to that last part of the question is, being an emotional, a lot of the times we feel like we're out of balance. And so I can appreciate the question because looking at it from a point of view of like when I'm having an emotional wave, whether I'm in my period or not, it makes me feel like there's something wrong with me. It makes me feel like I'm out of balance.
Mhm.
And usually what I find is that when I'm in an emotional wave, I'm trying to make a change, make a decision, pivot so that I don't feel this way. And I think in getting and making a decision, I'm going to go feel like I'm back in alignment. And I think for most emotionals, the thing that I'm constantly saying is you cannot make a decision during an emotional wave. So making a decision, even in your period, it is not the time. It is the time to be releasing. It's the time to go inward. It's the time to reflect on what you're experiencing without judgment. And sometimes if you can do it without story behind it.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's a
So does that
stillness.
make sense? Yeah. So does that make, I don't know, maybe that's what they were talking about because I do want to. Been in an emotional wave for 4 or 5 days now. And I wanted to make a bazillion decisions on things because I think in doing so, I'm going to feel better. Like, oh, that's why I'm having the emotional wave. No, it's not the story.
Yeah.
It's the experience, right? We always think it's the
Yes.
story. And as girls, and here's the thing. Oh, this is a good thing to talk about real quick at the end here is that it's the idea that even when we were having our period and how we always gave it as our excuse of why I'm so emotional, we were attaching our emotions to a
Mhm.
fucking story. And
Yes.
that's what we got to teach the younger generation. It's not a story, honey.
Yeah.
There's things going on that need to be talked about, discussed. You need to cry a little bit. You need to vent a little bit. You need to say that conversation I had with you at the beginning of this month really sucked. And when women start to do that, I think, and you tell me,
Mhm.
Corinne, like, then the next period comes and it's not so intense
Yes.
because you did the inner work and you said, honey, that conversation or the way you looked at me or the way this didn't get done when I asked or how you are overdoing and I'm underdoing or whatever the story is, like getting it out and having and vocalizing and being heard.
Yes.
Then all of a sudden the next cycle is like, oh, no, not much going on. Like I feel pretty good. Period's pretty smooth. Yeah, pretty right? Like, isn't that
Yeah,
part of what we're supposed to
Yeah.
be
definitely.
figuring out? I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's it. It's honoring what's going on and being part of it and seeing it for what it is. And that is what the period is. It's our reflection time. It is that aspect. That's when we used to cycle with the moon. New moon is reflection time. It's what
Yeah.
we're getting. Dark moon, I work with the dark moon all the time, and that is that last phase of waning where we're really that last minute releasing.
Mm,
And it's that
yeah.
reflection, okay, this is what I need to change to step into this brilliant next phase.
Mm.
So in our
Mm,
period, that's
yeah.
what this is. It's a reflection time. It's a time to converse, to let things go, to, have those moments of, okay, I see why that had come up. Yeah, definitely. Right on it.
And I know you had talked about this to some degree in our first episode, so feels like a really great conclusion time. So again, go listen to that first episode. But I also want to put up something because this reminded me of something I heard a couple of years ago that made so much sense. Is like when we are on our cycle, when it's the period time, and everything you just said is the time of reflection of releasing. It's like we literally don't have the energy to put up with bullshit. Like we just don't. And so that's part of why it's coming out too,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
we can't pretend anymore. And so this needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
And then it switches energy, just like y'all were saying. Does it?
Well, this was interesting, insightful, so much information that you helped us out with, Corinne. We really appreciate your time and energy. And anybody who's interested, we will tell everybody how they can get a hold of you and they can reach you if they would like some coaching on all of this.
So on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, I am under Mother Moon Mentoring. I'm calling out the women who are freaking ready. They are ready to own their divine feminine gift. They are ready to understand and unlock the power within their womb. I offer astrology readings and I offer mentoring where we come in, we look at your cycle, we work together to get a spiritual plan for you to work and understand each of your phases. It's a 6-month program, and you and I will be best friends by the end of it. I will be that girl who is sending you a text message going, "How's that period going? Let's talk
Yeah.
about this. What's emotionally coming up for you?" And I
Yeah.
hold space. That's what we're here to do
Love
for
it.
each other. So
That'd be awesome.
reach
That'd
out.
be so awesome to have somebody text me when I was in my period. Hey, how are you doing?
Right.
Ah! That'd be awesome. That would have been great. I would have loved that. That's
Right.
awesome. Very cool. Very cool.
Thank
So
you, ladies.
beautiful. Thank you so much
So
for
thanks
sharing all your
again.
wisdom.
Thank you for having
We
me.
appreciate it.
I'm so grateful for you too and what you're doing.
And as we always say, always remember how good can it get? And until we see you next time, thanks for watching Abstract Curiosity.
Love y'all. Bye.